Welcome to the Broker Growth Accelerator, where we discuss how real estate brokers can accelerate their growth by improving their agent recruiting and retention. I'm your host, Jim Turner, and today we'll discuss growth tactics with our special guest, who is a subject matter expert in the industry. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Jim Turner, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Brokerkit, and I'll be your host today. Today on the show, we're excited to have Yvonne Arnold, an experienced real estate coach with the Tom Ferry Organization. Yvonne, welcome to the Broker Growth Accelerator.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I'm happy to be here. I'm really glad we connected recently.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you have some great experience that we can kind of tap into today, but maybe just start out by giving us your background. How long have you been in the business? How did you get started, and how did you work your way up to, kind of coaching other brokers and agents?
I have a long career, and when I say long, I really mean long. I started literally answering phones from my brother's real estate office when I was 14. I would walk to his office from school, and
that's a record, by the way.
I think so. He was 14 years older than me, and came back from the Air Force and opened up a brokerage. And so I would walk to his office from school, and there's a kind of a standing joke that I was probably the first ISA before we even knew what that was, because my job was to cut the ads out of the newspapers and magazines, tape them to a 3-ring binder paper, and then take the calls. And when the calls would come in, I would ask them, "What ad are you calling from?" And I would put a check mark next to that ad, and then I would forward that call to an agent on the floor. So if a 14-year-old can do it, I'm pretty sure that our normal real estate agents out there should be able to do it. But we do have challenges with that. So we'll probably get into that today on our conversation.
Sure. It's always hard to get people to pick up the phone and call people.
It's a very big part of our industry, and it hasn't changed in, 40 years.
Yes. And having managed sales personnel across multiple industries, it's not unique to real estate.
No, it's not. So from there, then I ended up graduating high school and not going to college. I had a very strict Italian father, and girls didn't go to college then. So I went to work, and I went straight into escrow. So I'm in California, and I was an escrow secretary for a few years. And then when I turned 20, I became a title representative. So I worked in the title industry. So I have all the background except for mortgage in my repertoire. So then from title, after 12 or 13 years, working a lot of different divisions of title, whether it was residential and the real estate agents were my clients. I also worked the subdivision department and called on developers in the late 80s, which was kind of a really big booming time of California real estate. We had a lot of new subdivisions and builders coming out of the woodwork. So I covered a really large territory. So if you know Southern California, I covered all of Riverside and San Bernardino counties, and all the builders at the time, Lewis Homes and Landmark Land, and all the big builders at the time. So got my feet wet in builder land acquisition, that kind of thing. So then 1988, I believe, is when I got my real estate license, and started selling in Corona in 1990. The rest is history. So went to work with my husband and his family. My in-laws owned the RE/MAX franchise for 2 offices in the Riverside County area. And so I was a RE/MAX agent for 24 years. And then we worked 2 crashed markets. So the 90s foreclosure market of California, which was the aerospace industry decline, and then the 2008 crash. And during those times, I always say to my coaching clients now, you have to be agile and you have to be ready for market shifts, and just assume they're coming. And then when they do, move fast. Make the shift that you have to make quickly. So we were residential resale agents until crashes came. And then we were REO agents. And my husband was the REO listing agent, and I was the buyer agent. And we would shift roles. And then when the regular market would come back, I would shift back to listing agent, and he went and built houses. So we have a lot of dynamics.
It's timely advice to consider that right now too.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, and I don't care what any of the new agents coming into the market that think they have the answers to all of it, and it's all technology and it's all AI and it's all that. Sure, those are great tools. But the real estate industry, believe it or not, doesn't change a whole lot.
And I don't know about you, but I'm terrified to work with a bot to buy or sell a home and a transaction size that high. I think that most people, technology is great. I'm a technology guy. We love it, but it will never replace the human contact on a transaction size that high.
Never. I don't believe it will. There's always going to be a human contact. And now what we're saying is the human must be better. And so how did I get into coaching? To be honest with you, I always say it wasn't for the money. That's for sure, because the real estate money is a lot better. But I got tired of watching real estate agents literally make a ton of money and then die broke. And it still happens today. People think real estate agents are just, they're just rich and because they show off. They buy new cars and new boats and things like that. And those of us that have been around a while, we always say we know when an REO market's coming along because all the real estate agents have new boats, new Hummers. They've wrapped everything. They're going on giant trips. And we go, crash is coming because everybody's made a ton of money and most of them didn't save it. So I coach because I am very fiscally conservative when it comes to that. And I make sure that they're using things and doing the right thing with their money. I always say, I'm not a huge Grant Cardone fan, but he has one saying that I really latched onto, and it's play broke, even when you're not.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Okay. Well, thanks for giving us a little bit of background there on how you got into the business. Now let's kind of turn over to, the main topic for today, which is talking about the talent funnel. Here at Brokerkit, we're really focused on the talent funnel versus the sales funnel. We believe any brokerage, just like any business, has two primary funnels, the sales funnel and the talent funnel. Most brokerages are hyper focused on the sales funnel, and it makes sense because they came up through sales. They tend to have a lot of systems and processes and metrics and all that around the sales funnel, but less so on the talent funnel. We see a lot of quite large brokerages managing it all on a spreadsheet. And we just want to kind of tap into your wisdom today on the people focus on that talent funnel. What are some of the best practices so they can see the greatest success? Let's just start out with just some basic strategy questions, though. So to me, a key part of being successful in recruiting the right agents is knowing who you are. What is your true value proposition and who is a good fit for that value proposition? So when you're working with a broker, how do you help them think about what is their value proposition and how do they become unique and compelling so they're truly attracting agents versus having to kind of chase them down and talk them into joining their brokerage?
It's such even as a top level question, it can go so many directions. And being around so long, I've watched brokerages do a lot of things. I mean, Dave Liniger, Remax, was one of the trailblazers in regards to changing broker models. Now we see people like EXP and Real and, a lot of different companies like that. But it has to be profitable for everybody. And there has to be that unique value proposition. I got asked years ago, if I change brokerages, what should I look for from agents? And my answer was always, first off, what do you need? Because every single person, every agent is different. And so they may not fit with one brokerage or one team lead, or they need to go get something else. It's interesting because I'm from a family of real estate agents, and my husband and I are very independent agents. So we didn't need a lot. We were autonomous at our brokerage. We paid the desk fee, office fee, and we liked that old school Remax model. Whereas I have relatives who love traditional franchises. They want to go into an office and have, the meetings every week, and they want to be a participant in the events that those brokerages hold. And so a broker really needs to kind of figure out who do they want and what's their brokerage model look like, because then they have to attract those people. And so that's the first step in my mind. is the broker has to have a strategy as to what does their culture and their team and the people around them look like. And, back in the day, and I know I just heard this recently, really successful brokerages, they actually incorporate the agents in their brokerage and ask them, is that person going to be a good fit for our group here? And there was many times in our brokerage, we would say no. And, I remember a story. There was one gal, she didn't get hired to that brokerage for years because the other agents did not want her in the culture, right? And you have to be careful about that because we're all different. And so the broker, though, needs to know, and the team leader, because now we're talking not just brokerages, but these giant teams that are under big brokerages. And the team leader has to know, what does their model and what does their culture attract?
Yep. Well, and the people that would be listening to this are potentially either a team leader, a broker owner, managing broker in a larger brokerage that leads like an office or a region, or some leadership team helping them. So it could be kind of all of the above.
Yeah, it's an avatar. I've toured both Zappos and Zillow offices, and both of those companies at the time when we toured them had their avatar pictures up on the walls, and you knew exactly who they were going after.
That's actually kind of not my next question, but the question after that. So I'm glad you brought that up. So knowing who's a good fit for you, and you kind of touched on this, but a big part of that is comp plan these days, right? I have almost daily conversations with brokers and ask them what's going well, what's, where are your challenges, with the talent funnel. And it tends to be very bifurcated depending on if they're more of a traditional brokerage split model or a flat fee model. The answers are polar opposite, and they're each talking about each other as their competition. So maybe take one at a time and say, like, if you're a flat fee broker, how do you need to think about how to differentiate yourself? And then take the kind of counterpoint, which is like, okay, you're the flat fee. How do you position against the traditional brokerages?
It's interesting. There's 2 million real estate agents in the country in US.
Yep.
It's like 1 million and some realtors, and then there's another million that don't have the title. And that's just the US. That's not counting, Canada and everywhere else. So I find it interesting because brokers or team leads should never go from a scarcity mindset. And they do. They go from scarcity like that agent is like the only agent, and I'm going to fight for them to get them to my brokerage, and I'm going to get them away from that other guy. And it's like, I don't think it's a right way of looking at it. It's the scarcity. Because an agent who is bottom line oriented and says, leave me alone, I'm going to pay for all my own stuff, my own advertising, everything. I just don't want to pay you much of a fee, but I need some things. I need supervision, and I need, and I believe that you deserve a fee for that, right? That's going to be more of your flat fee broker. And that's going to attract a certain agent. Then there's the traditional brokerages or teams. You come in and it's a 70-30 split for a cap. And then I'm going to be asking, well, this is great. I want to be on your team because you have what I want. And you're offering services. You have support staff. You have great internet in your office. I'm not going to be working from home. I want to go to the office. I will pay you your fee for that. And that's where they don't know how to show their unique value prop. They don't know how to sell themselves to the agents who really are the agents they should be attracting. And they need to ask more questions. They're not asking questions of the agents. The agents are coming in and the brokers are saying, yeah, we've got a desk for you, come on in. We want you on our team. But they're not really saying, what do you want? What are you looking for? How many deals do you want to do next year? How much money do you want to earn? A broker, sales manager, recruiter should be asking those kind of questions. Because if you have somebody who's, let's say it's me and I'm a housewife, an empty nester, I got my license, and my husband's a multimillionaire, I don't have to earn any money. So I'm going to have less motivation to be somewhere. Is that who you really want? Or I'm the single mom that needs to make a living and I'm hungry. I'm going to do everything you asked me to do. is that who you want? So see, there's all different, I just don't think enough questions are ever asked.
Now you touched on kind of avatars, or you could use kind of personas, but I think that's another piece where I think people struggle with. And in some ways we complicate it a little bit with Broker because we have lots of options because we have all kinds of customers and different models that are seeking different things. So we give them capabilities to go after lots of different agents, but it doesn't mean they're all the right agents for them, right? And the key is people knowing who they are, right? Their value proposition and what are those key avatars that are a good fit for them, and then focusing on them versus blasting everybody in the MLS with generic emails, hoping somebody's going to reply, right? Because when you're reaching out to people that are a fit, it's more of a rifle shot than shotgun shot. They're much more likely to be a fit and be successful when they join. They're much more likely to respond. It's going to have a much higher, like you're going to have a higher conversion rate. Everything's going to go better, basically. But the key is you need to know who you should be targeting. So how should people think about that? And in some ways, it can kind of tie back to that comp plan model too.
It's interesting. Over the last few years, I've gotten really engaged in disc profiles and a lot of things like that I kind of glossed over years ago. Yep. Now it's like all about that. Like we know there's a certain personality type that's better as an ISA or a marketing person, or hey, I just need you as a transaction coordinator because you love everything behind the scenes. You have a real estate license, but you're really not cut out to sell. And then we know that like a listing agent is usually a D on the disc is a high D, high I, right? And they have zero organizational skills, know, and we know that a buyer's agent is less D and more of an IS. And so when we start looking at that, brokers and team leads and sales managers and recruiters, they need to stop glossing the surface of that. They need to really start paying attention to somebody who is that, because what they're doing is they're putting people in the wrong seats. And I'm a believer in right people, right seats. Everybody wins. And even if somebody comes to you and says, I want to be a real estate agent, great. Well, you might bring that agent in because they're brand spanking new and they don't know any different. But you better be very in tune with having a disc profile, checking it out, and then knowing, hey, we're going to give them some opportunities and we're going to train them and we're going to put them through the training course and the 30, 60, 90 onboarding and all of that. But we know by the end of 30, 60, 90 days, if they haven't put a deal together, we know they're probably not going to be cut out for this. And then they're going to starve. And too many brokers over the years, I mean, like I said, 40 years have been around or more, they just let people just wallow in it. They just kind of flounder. And it's a terrible thing in our industry. It's why we have bad real estate agents out there. I kind of put the onus on the brokers and the team leads because they're telling people they can do something when they really shouldn't be doing it. If you're not a salesperson and you don't want to make a phone call, you probably are going to starve in this industry. And if you feel like, oh, I'm being too pushy. No, I don't want to knock a door. No, I don't hold open houses. We don't do that in our market. If you have all these excuses, sales is not your thing.
Sure. And so the personality assessments, which I'm a big fan of, and we use a lot ourselves. Are you talking about using that for new agents primarily versus kind of experienced agents? Everyone, like how would you consider the use of those?
If I get a new coaching client in my schedule who's new to me, and they have a brokerage or a team, the very first thing I have them do is I have them give everybody on the team, including themselves, a new disc profile. Take the disc again. So we have it, and then we analyze everybody on the team. We do an audit of, do you have everybody? And then it starts coming up. We start seeing that, well, that person, we really love them. They've been with us for 6 years, but they're not really doing really well in that position. And I go, hey, we're not going to just throw them out. Let's move them. I have a perfect example. I had a guy that, a team lead in Florida, and he hired this guy, and the guy was such a team player. He got his real estate license, and he was at every meeting. He showed up at every function. He made his calls. He also had a second job too, because he needed to have an income for his family before he could let go and go real estate full time. And 6-8 months go by, and I'm like, man, talking to the team lead, and I said, this isn't working. He's like the perfect team member. But he's not closing any deals. We did a disc profile on him, and he was an SC. And I said, move him to your ops manager. He moved him to ops manager, gave him a salary. He quit his job, and the guy helped him build this giant, really productive team.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. We happen to use the predictive index. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's based on the same research as the disc. It's pretty similar. I'm part of an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization.
Yeah.
And a lot of the local founders and business owners in local markets, and a lot of them use it as well, especially in service industries that hire a lot of people. We find it extremely predictive of who's going to be a fit in a given role. So
totally, it's perfect. And then you can then talk about salaries. And this is the one thing you keep talking about, compensation.
Yeah.
When you know, it's always intrigued me that a realtor will go to brokerages, and I got my real estate license and I want to work at their brokerage. And then the broker says, well, our split is. And the agent says, oh, no, I need to get more than that. Well, we've all heard the saying, 90% of nothing is still nothing,
Right.
And so are you really going to work for a broker or a team because of the split? And what we have determined is if that broker and team lead has done their homework and they also have value prop to offer, and training and all of that, the split never even comes into play.
Yeah.
It's not even a question.
So one thing back to the predictive index, and really the disc is kind of the same thing, that I've noticed is there's certain people that do, so we're kind of a virtual remote company. And I think a lot of brokerages are starting to do this, right? Mm-hmm. That is a unique personality that can be self-directed in a remote environment without going to an office and having people there to talk to and kind of potentially have some oversight. And it's not necessarily correlated with who's good at sales. So that the people that are like that ops profile tend to do better in a remote environment. So one of the challenges that I see that we're facing, and I can imagine any brokerage going kind of remote, is in a remote team without that office presence, the people that are great at sales may not be great at being self-directed in a remote environment.
That's 100%. If I was running a sales division from any company, if I was selling widgets, I would have the sales team all together in-house, because sales is energy driven.
Yep.
And you need that competition. You need to know, when we had the Remax offices, my family had it, we had every top production agent in our 2 markets in our offices. And we were doing, back in the 90s, 2,000 to 2,500 closings a year with 2 offices. It was like energy. You walked into that office and it was buzzing, and then you're bouncing off of each other and, all that. So sales, I believe, needs the energy. Operations, if you're an operator, you want it dead ass quiet. It's like, I don't want to be bugged. And we have a problem with that when we were all before COVID, because we were actually having to tell team leads and brokers, hey, take your operations people, your TCs, your LCs, your marketing department, and put them in a room and lock the door, and don't let the agents bother them. Mm-hmm. Because the agents would just come in all day, So I would agree with that. Virtually, I'm telling people now, with virtual positions, you can do operations from anywhere in the world, which makes it great, because now we have all these brokerages doing, expansion teams or brokerages in other states, and they're growing, and they can have a hub in one place in the world that does all of the work for all the offices. Mm-hmm. So that cuts down on payroll.
Sure. So then what do you specifically look for? I mean, a big part of hiring the people that excel later is pattern matching. And like, you've been kind of noticing patterns for a while. And I think it probably depends partly on the brokerage type, their comp model, but also, are they focused on new agents versus experienced agents? I find few brokerages that are only focused on new agents. Most are, some are focused only on experienced agents. Most are focused on kind of both. But at the end of the day, with producing agents, it's easier because you can see who produced, right? But even that's not always indicative of future results, right? Depending on the market. What are the qualities you look for or you think a broker should be looking for in people that will tend to be successful, whether they're new or experienced or, regardless? And again, it probably ties a little bit back to their model and what's best for them. But like in general, what are the things that you've seen?
In general, you're looking in the sales side. So we're not talking operations or any of that, just the sales agents in recruiting an agent. The ones that I see the most successful, the big teams, the brokerages that are the most successful have a little bit of all of it, but they have a career path for people. And then they have benchmarks. So you're going to always have a large portion of new agents. And then you're going to have, and it's really unfortunate, it usually ends up being 3 quartiles. So you have the new agents, then you got the middle of the road agents, and then you have the high performers. And the unfortunate part is that middle of the road agent gets ignored. The brokers spend a lot of time on bringing in the new agent, pumping them up, training them all this stuff. They cost a lot of money and they're very high maintenance because you got to get them ramped up. And then they spend a lot of time with the top producers because everybody wants to be around a top producer, right? And so this middle section gets ignored. And I find that to be the goldmine area. That's where you really need to dive into that middle segment and say, hey, if you're closing, 8 to 15 homes a year, that's your middle segment. In any market, I don't care what your price point is. That's your middle segment. I would be in there and I'd be inside that pool figuring out who needs to go back to training, right? Who needs to go get some mentorship from a high performer? Who isn't going to go beyond 8 houses sales a year because they have no desire to? Mm-hmm. Who's not hungry? Who's hungry but is floating around because they're quiet and nobody's paying attention to them. So I would feed into that. And then of course you're always moving the new ones up. Your top producer segment is always going to be your smaller segment. And because there's just not that many. I mean, we were good performers, but we never did the numbers of transactions that some of the agents I coach now do on their own. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some pretty incredible real estate agents out there that are just machines on their own. And so I have to help them figure out how to delegate.
Right. Because
that broker needs to go, that top producer sold 100 houses last year by themselves. Wow. With one assistant, right?
Is that true, by the way? Do you have an agent?
Oh, absolutely.
They're absolutely crushing it. That was a very busy year for them.
Very busy. And they're just always on the phones. They're just always doing it. And they're those kind of people, but that's the person that's really hard to coach up. So we have to coach the brokers or the team leads to say, hey, take that person. Now you're going to bring in either one of your middle segment or your newbies, and you're going to give them to that top producer and that top producer is going to pay that agent 10% off the top of their split. And that agent's going to do everything boots on the ground for them because now you're training leaders. And really, if you want to be a successful brokerage and a successful team, you're helping others become leaders like you. Mm-hmm. And agents are never taught how to be managers, never taught how to be trainers. They all think they have to do it all themselves. Right. And it's why people get a glass ceiling. It's the only real estate is the only industry that there is no glass ceiling. You can make as much money as you possibly want. But we put our own glass ceiling on because we say, oh, I'm worn out at 20 deals a year. Right. I can't do anymore. Well, yeah, you can.
Right. Well, and what you're talking about is bringing leverage to their model, right? Which to me, that's the power of the talent funnel versus the sales funnel, right? Yes. If you're focused on sales yourself, there's only so many homes you can sell, right? You can go after more expensive homes, but at some point there is a volume issue, right? And there's also, 100 homes a year with one admin. I mean, most people probably wouldn't want to deal with the work-life balance or lack thereof of that either, right?
There isn't any.
Right?
Yeah, there isn't any.
but there is a way to achieve those sales by building a team under you, right? And that's the leverage you're bringing with the talent funnel, right? And that's That's our belief. Our fundamental belief is too many people are focused on that side of the business and they're so ultra focused on sales.
Yeah. And the problem is that now from your perspective of growing, showing somebody how you can bring in the funnel, you have to get through their limiting beliefs as a broker owner or team leader that actually will work.
Right.
And that you could actually bring in a funnel and tell that top producer, hey, do you want to go to 250 homes this year by yourself? Because I can help you do that, but it's going to cost you now some money. Right. See, that agent's got to be told how that's going to cost them some money.
Yeah. Or would you rather make the same amount of money and have more free time?
Yeah, it's time or money. I mean, it's
yes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, and I'll tell you, I was one of those. I was living in Idaho and California, and we've been up in Idaho for 20 years, and I wanted to be in my happy place of Idaho. And my 30-year real estate business was in California. And I had to figure out how to be in two places at once. So I had to do what now I coach all the time. I had to force myself to understand I got to bring in an agent and give him money, and I take less. And right. It works perfectly.
Okay, so we're kind of at the point where they know themselves, they know the agents that are a good fit for them. What are the best ways to engage with those agents and kind of start a conversation? Whether it be at offline events, board events, open houses, or just picking up the phone and calling them, reaching out via social media, text, email, whatever, right? There's all these different channels, offline, online. What's the best way to start that conversation with people?
It's so interesting. I always tell the story that in 24 years as a RE/MAX agent, I was only literally called to be recruited twice. That's it. Of course, I got some emails from people once in a while, but those go straight to like trash. Yep. But 2 times I got phone calls. And both times I was like, gosh, I just want to compliment you. You actually picked up the phone and called me.
That's amazing.
That's a big compliment. Thank you very much. I was just thinking, wow, they just don't think I'm worth recruiting, Right. And we were selling anywhere from 40 to 100 houses a year. So that right there always tells me the phone call is always the best. The personal relationship, this part of it is the relationship part. Yep. And you're dealing with egos. And I'm going to say it outright on your podcast. The real estate agents who do well in the industry, we all have egos. Ego isn't a bad thing unless you let it get out of control. Okay. But everybody who's in sales has to have a little ego. So they want to be pumped up. Even as a coach, I'm honored, and my ego's got a little feather in its cap because I'm on your podcast today.
Well, and the flip side is they have to be confident, right? I mean, there's a correlation, right? If you're not confident, you're not going to succeed at sales, right?
Correct.
So they're kind of tied together.
Correct. And so how do you find that out? Well, you're the broker working on your own, picking up the phone, getting your list, knowing who to call, and knowing who the avatar is from your breakdown. And I'm just picking the phone call up and talking to them and finding out what they want, because everybody is what's in it for me. Okay.
Yep.
What's going to make me want to move? Find out what's in it for me. What's my purpose and all of that. And if you can have a couple of conversations with somebody enough times, you're going to figure that out really quick, because it's just like prospecting listings and buyers. Mm-hmm. You have to keep following up. You're not going to hook them the first call. Right. So that's number one. And number two is, I think she was the number one RE/MAX recruiter in the country at one time out of Florida, Yoslyn Hollow. And she wrote a little book and put in the U back in recruiting. And there was some really good little nuggets in that book where basically I've got agents in my brokerage on my team selling deals. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, Susie Q, you just closed a deal with Joey over there at XYZ Real Estate. What'd you think of them during the transaction? How'd they do? And Susie Q is going to say, they were really nice. I would love to do another deal with him. Great. I'm going to pick up the phone call and I'm going to call that agent and say, congratulations on the closing. Yeah. We were really excited to work with you. And by the way, I wanted to let you know the agent in my office said they really want to work with you again. and you were great to work with. Could we have coffee? Because maybe I can make that happen more often.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and I would say when I talk to brokers, what's working well and not, the people that are doing some kind of outreach to cooperating agents works really well, right? Because you're reaching out to congratulate them. So who doesn't want that call, right? It's not like a cold call. It's warm. They're happy to be recognized. And it's a great way to start a conversation. And I think I had a conversation with a broker that did 5,000 transactions a month that had no outreach to any of the cooperating agents. That was like a couple months ago. And they were asking, how do I buy leads? How do I buy leads? I'm like, they're there. Like, just somebody needs to reach out to these people and recognize the ones that are doing a great job.
It's low-hanging fruit in my mind. I mean, it's kind of crazy because remember what I said, the middle group of agents in the world are the most ignored by their broker or team lead.
Right.
And so if their broker is ignoring them, you shouldn't.
Right. Yeah. Well, and what you said about, pick up the phone and call people, totally agree with that. Emails are great to warm people up. Same for social media, but nobody's going to be like, let me join your brokerage off of kind of an email you sent. It's also hard to cut through the noise just with email these days. Texting and social media has a little better response rate, but the only reason you would do that is to start a conversation, right? And if you and this is unique in this industry, people pick up their phone. This is most other industries. It is brutal to get through on the phone these days. People, it's pretty tough, like calling somebody in a corporate job, because you got to typically go through all these gatekeepers.
Nobody answers the phone is still our cash register.
Yeah, people do their numbers are easy to find, and people pick up their phone. Right, it's the one thing that is easiest to do.
I think you also have to be able to, once you get them and their attention, you have to be able to communicate what your unique value, your USP is. What is your value prop? Why would they want to come to you? And this is where most broker owners never take the time to actually put it down in writing. They think it and they want to, blurt it out. Right. And so it's funny because usually when I have somebody on a coaching call and I say, what's your value prop? And they want to go, blah, 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 and I go, don't tell me, show me. And they would, what do you mean? Show me, screen share with me on this Zoom right now and show me your brochure. What is your value proposition brochure?
Right.
Because I'm visual. I am not an analytical if I'm a real good salesperson. Okay. Yeah. I'm visual and I want to see what is it why are you different than the broker I'm with? And if I can see it in writing in a brochure, if I can see it in black and white, I can then say, well, my broker doesn't do that. My broker doesn't do that. My team lead doesn't do that. Wow. And then what's that cost me? Because that's the other side of that brochure. It should have what is its valuation. So if I'm providing you, some brokers out there are providing leads. So if I coach Baird & Warner in Chicago, and they have an e-biz division. And they provide, their regular agents are asked, do you want to be on the eBiz division? If you are, you get Zillow leads, you get Realtor.com leads, you get OpCity leads, you get all these things. Yes, I want to be on the eBiz division. Great. What does that cost the broker and what would be saving me? Okay. So there should be that valuation on that brochure. So you've got to be able to, it's like a listing presentation. You're going to go to a listing presentation without any CMA, without any comps, without anything, any marketing product. You got to be able to market yourself.
Yeah, it's all about what's in it for them, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you call them, you walk through that. How do you take it from there to get to the point where you kind of close them, so to speak?
I think it's a situation similar to what agents are doing right now. We see a lot in our Tom Ferry ecosystem. We have a lot of people doing seller seminars right now because we need to get listings. And the seller seminars they're really working. And so it's the same thing. You have to provide value. So we see it in a lot of the new brokerages, the new franchises, the Reals, the EXPs. They have masterminds every week. They have local events in their local communities, and because they're recruiting to a downline. So they're not just about their own team or their own office or own brokerage. They've got that rev share motivation. But I think any brokerage should be doing it this way. And I think that they should say, hey, come to our office. Oh, we're Tom Ferry clients, and we have Tom doing an hour and a half business planning session on Zoom. And we'd like you to come in at 9:00, next Tuesday morning when it's going to be aired, and sit in our office, in our conference room with our agents, and come and do the business planning. No strings attached. Just come, listen to Tom Ferry. We've got the printouts of the business plan. Build your business plan. Why wouldn't you? So inviting them to participate, because remember, there is a lot of virtual brokerages and there's a lot of little mom and pop shops. I mean, my license now is hung at a mom and pop shop. They don't do weekly meetings. You're on your own. You just hang your license there and you pay $4.99 a deal, right? And so I don't have any place to go. So there's a lot of agents like that right now in the industry. Invite them to be a part of something. And then as you do that, they might just say, you know what, I'm just going to come over here. Is that all right?
Well, and that kind of ties back to my point earlier, which is in a remote virtual environment, it's hard to excel in sales because the people that are good at sales are not necessarily good at that. And you're offering them a way to some structure around that truly could help them.
We do things like on my team leads that are building teams. I say, your team of 3, and you want to get to 7 team members. Your team of 3 should be doing a call night every week. Mm-hmm. Invite more people to come to your call night. And we have people do that all the time, and they get at least one recruit every month or 2 months that they're doing it. And they go, well, what should we tell them? I said, print out a bunch of old, cold, moldy leads, print them out in an Excel sheet from your follow-up boss or wherever you have them, hand them to that agent, tell them, we have leads for you to call. You don't even have to bring your own. Give them and then say, if you convert these, you just, on your honor, pay us a 25% referral fee if you turn them around. You're not pressuring them to join the team at the time. Mm-hmm. You're giving them something to say, I want to come back for more.
Right. So now you got them engaged. They're in events, which is a great idea. Really unique, kind of talking about the seller events too. But where do you take the conversation from there? How do you make it kind of concrete to the point of closing them, so to speak?
I think at that point, if it's yourself and you're the broker and you're the recruiter, or if you have a sales manager that does it, or you have a recruiter actually that does it, depending on the size, I think that person doing it has to have a little bit of a sixth sense. I think they have to pay attention enough to understand when the timing is right. It's no different than when you're showing buyers houses, Right. You're going to walk into 10 houses and you're going to know instantly the minute you walk into the one that they're going to write that offer on. Mm-hmm. It's a sixth sense. You just know because you've done it so often. And the ones they're not going to write an offer on, and you can't force it no matter how you do it. Even if you think it's the best house for them, you can't force it. So it's the same with, we're all human. So it's the same thing there. That person you have to it's like fishing, you kind of know, you throw it out there and you're like, okay. Oh, and you got a little tug. Oh, got off the line. Okay. Oh, I'm going to throw it back out there again, and then you have to then say, how about we talk a little bit more serious about you maybe coming over to our office? We've never really discussed, what the process is and how we actually onboard people and what splits are and how much money you could make here, and then go for it. That's
a great way to take it. That's very smooth and it's easier, right? You're not calling them out of the blue trying to close them on a call when they don't know you, right? They've attended the event, it's a much easier conversation, much smoother.
Well, and I will tell you, most of the successful teams that do this, their agents are actually the ones that actually bring people in.
Right.
It's not the broker or the sales manager or any of that. They're like the F&I guy at the car dealership. They close and they get the paperwork out. But it's the agents in the team and the brokerage that rave about being where they're at.
Right. Well, and so, you touched on cooperating agents as a great source of, kind of candidates. Agent referrals is when we consistently hear, and some are crushing it with like a huge portion of the agents they recruit via referrals, and some just don't do it at all. And it feels like it's almost like a cultural thing. Some people will say, I don't want my agents involved in that. And sometimes it's agents are recruit, and it kind of depends on, if there's a downline, they're obviously much more incentivized. And then there's kind of middle ground where maybe they're referring, but we see a lot of brokers that don't touch that. But the folks that do are seeing, great success. So what are your thoughts around how they should consider that?
I will tell you, if you see brokerages that are not touching that, I think they're crazy. Mm-hmm. I think that is a missed opportunity. And I don't know what their limiting belief around it is. But I mean, even when I was at Remax, from 1994 to, whatever 24 years later was, we got an incentive to bring an agent over if they were hired. We got a free month's rent, mm-hmm. which at the time was about $750, so we were incentivized to bring people to the company. But I don't think what probably even my brokerage back then could have done more is they could have emphasized, if you're bringing people in like you and you like that person, the whole office, the whole brokerage wins, mm-hmm. right? Your office parties are funner, right. The camaraderie is better, you can go out and have cocktails together, down at the local pub, and you like being around them, right? If you have an office of independent contractors and nobody socializes, that's a model. That is the avatar of some brokerages.
Right.
And that's who the broker is. They don't like, they're not Christmas holiday party throwers, that kind of thing. They're like, right. Yeah, go sell another house, and so that attracts that kind of agent. Leave me alone. This is all I want to do, and I'll do my thing. But those brokerages, those are the ones that are going to fight all the time about splits, because those agents are always just going to want 95.5 and 98.2, they're going to always push for more. So I don't think that's a brokerage model that is very popular. And you'd be broke as a broker.
Right. So. Right. Race to the bottom, so to speak.
Yeah. Race to the bottom. Yes. That's right. Perfect. Yeah.
Well, Yvonne, we normally cover recruiting, onboarding, and retention. We're getting just to kind of the recruiting part because you have so many pearls of wisdom today. If possible, maybe we can have a second session to go in that side as well. But I think, I want to keep this manageable so that people will actually listen to it. We're pretty deep into this now. So I'll probably maybe wrap this today, but love to talk to you about kind of a follow-on session to cover, okay, now we talked him into joining. What now? How do we help him be successful?
That's a whole big other conversation. So yeah, that would be a whole separate podcast.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. But okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. Where could our listeners find you online if they wanted to ask you any questions?
The best place to find me is at Instagram, believe it or not. If you go to YvonneArnold.com, that's going to be my real estate site. But Instagram is at YvonneArnold_. And that's where I do most of the coaching posts and stuff that deals with the real estate industry, less real estate. It's more coaching and what you're doing there. So, but I am in the process of building out a little website and stuff like that so they can get more of the coaching side of it. And also, of course, you can go to tomferry.com and under coaches, there is a speaker section. So I am a speaker for Tom as well. So if they want to book me for anything or their podcast as well, I'd be happy to join.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And thanks to the listeners out there for tuning in today. Hopefully you found some action, some great ideas to put into action. Think about that now. Just take kind of one or two and think about how you're going to put it into practice in the next 30 days. And please do tune in again in the future for other podcasts to give you some other ideas that you can put into practice to grow your brokerage today.